My name is Jacoub Reyes, and I'm a 2025 artist resident at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I'm a multidisciplinary artist and an interdisciplinary artist. Once I kind of experiment with different materials and tools, I can let them stand on their own, like my ceramics, or I can integrate them, like using ceramic raw materials in prints. Really, whatever I have access to at that time and whatever ideas that I want to create, I just do it. This is actually a monumental woodblock piece. I carved all this by hand into wood, and I collaborated with IS Projects down in Miami. It basically took like 6 people over the course of a whole week to print these whole 2 panels onto one piece of fabric. The imagery is a mix of all the cultures that define me. So I have oleander, wild spotted orchid, pineapple, guava, devil's horsewhip, and they all kind of describe and ask questions about what is native and what is invasive. I'm Puerto Rican, Cuban, and Pakistani. So a lot of these are relevant in their natural habitats, but once they cross across the world, they might become invasive. They all have different purposes. And I think that's really interesting when you think about, culture and identity, the overarching idea of what's good and bad, right? And how those views change when you're in different places. So this one talks about the Greco-Roman influence in Pakistan and how that melded with Buddhist artwork. So you can see all these kind of relics of Buddhism, Greek and Roman influence in Pakistan. So I'm kind of focusing on time and place before Islamic rule, and then that transition into what we see in the contemporary world. For this block that I created, this pattern background, I went down into the library of the Golden Foundation and found a book on Islamic art and drew inspiration from a lot of the designs. So I kind of made my own design and made this stamp. I love using found objects. So this was actually a bunch of ornamental designs from previous residents because I thought integrating something directly from Golden would be amazing in a piece like this. The team here at Golden set up this marbling area, and I was able to make all these marbled studies. So this is just kind of me experimenting, seeing how I can manipulate the materials to make these images. So up until this point, my work has been subtly political. But now that we've entered a new era of policy and politics, I want it to be a little bit more straightforward and also mix in history. My background influences my work as well. I have a single mom who raised me, and we had to move around a lot. So that constant displacement cemented itself in my practice in a way. Growing up, there was a lot of xenophobia, Islamophobia post 9/11. Those experiences really made me grapple with my identity and heritage. I find the most joy in experimentation. I think it's kind of like an adrenaline rush when you paint because you're working on these details, and sometimes the design calls for you to go over them. You really have to think, all right, should I stop? Should I keep on going? So I really like that back and forth, and that's where I find joy, is this puzzle no one knows the answer to but me. And during the whole process, I still don't know the answer until I get there.
I'm Suzanne Unrein. I'm a 2025 artist resident at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. One of the things I wanted to do while I was in the residency is to work on flower paintings, not just because it's the dead of winter, but also because it allows you to experiment more with materials. Be able to play without thinking as much about composition or having to get down exactly what's in my mind. And part of that, I think, had to do with the chaos of today, and I just wanted to make something very joyful. You know, the funny thing has happened since I've been here. These insects think these flowers are real because they keep going into them. When I'm working on the paintings of the flowers, this wasp came at me and I think it was like, get away from my flower. It was really funny. I love these fluorescents. I'm trying them in different ways than I have in the past, working on top of dried oil and then also mixing them in with other oils. Because I'm wanting these colors to really pop out, Black Gesso does that with the fluorescence, and I'm really playing around with fluorescence and interest in the unnatural and how it relates to nature, and it works wonders with the Black Gesso. I've combined animals and people to such an extent that they often become hybrids, which goes back to Greek mythology. This recent work is thinking more about technology and how that has changed us and will continue to change us. I tend to work large scale. I'm creating worlds, and in order to do that, I need to make very large paintings. During the pandemic, I started making these paintings that were these huge worlds where people were isolated. I wanted it to be where they're life size or even larger than life size because I want to get into what their world is. There's a cast of characters and they were isolated from the rest of the world, but they were very much intimate with each other, and they were animals and people, and I set them on vessels in the sea, and so they were being transported by or capsized in these small gatherings, and the scale was very large because I was creating these entire worlds. What if she was a robotic specialist and she was partly a robot or not entirely human? Before I go to the studio, I usually run for like an hour, and that's my way of meditating and to sort of focus. When I get up in the morning, I have a journal and I write down what's on my mind and ideas I have. Being at this residency, it's been about what I'm going to work on today, thinking about what I've learned and what I want to try to put together and make happen.
My name is Rachel Ostrow, and I am a 2025 artist resident at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I am a painter, and my painting process really comes down to my tool, which is a squeegee. A little bit more than 10 years ago, I put down a brush. I picked up a squeegee to clean off a painting, and I started drawing with the squeegee, and I've kind of never gone back. It allows me to kind of be wild, to be gestural, to be physical, to almost dance in a way with the painting. Even since I was a small child, you know, when you watch the rhythmic gymnasts with the ribbons and they go like this, and then all of a sudden that's a form and then it disappears, that's wild to me. Weirdly, speed is important in this process. Up until a couple years ago, all of my paintings were black. And that happened because I was carving in and out with the squeegee, and the black just happens. The paint moves against each other in a way that's different if you did that exact same move slowly. And all of that has to happen fast, and that's part of who I am. I want to be attacking something, just to be lost in the making of it. I've been trying for the past 2 years to make paintings that aren't black. And that kind of feeds into some of the stuff that I'm doing here, because then all of a sudden what happens on the background is important, because the next part is that then I go super slow. There's this wild part of the technique, and then there's the part of the technique where I'm cleaning everything up. It's being really, really particular, and I always used to say that's not what I want to do. But in this weird way now, at this age, wherever I am, I love doing that. So now I get to have two very separate parts of my process. What I have found is the best surface for me is a very hard, very slippery surface that has nothing that's going to suck in the paint and stain it. I want the paint to be as fluid as possible, such that I can come in with a rag after and clean it back to white. The erasability, the working reductively, works for me, and it's how I can draw. So what's happening back here is a lot of different false starts and a whole lot of experimentation. I just got really into building up these base layers with the interference colors. The interference colors are awesome, and I would have never, ever done it, like never. There is this tiny bit of glow that adds to the magicalness of the work. It's super, super subtle, but it's gonna be very, very different from my work. I am endlessly on the search for like other little things to make that are adjacent to my artwork. And so I'm gonna carve into these pink things and pull it out and make a window thing, because that was the idea that I had, in the middle of the night. That has happened multiple times while I'm here, that I wake up and I'm like, I can use this to try and make this and to do this. It's totally delightful. What my art does for me, it's kind of like more of a space to space out and to imagine. And I don't think people are actively making those spaces as much anymore, where you're not constantly being entertained, but you can let your own mind do the entertaining by looking at something and thinking about it, or imagining something, or wondering about it. That's a role that artwork really needs to play in the world right now.